specifically go and discuss more about it. Okay, and then we are certainly going to touch the surface of what are the Azure job trends, which means that how the jobs are coming in Azure. So we have some data available, but we are going to, so from my experience, I'm also going to share that what are the different job trends which are available. All right, and then we are going to talk about what are different domains in Azure, which means that what are different categories of services which are available in Azure. So let's say if you have if you need some computation like virtual machine or so that kind of stuff, or if you need some kind of storage in the cloud, so what are different options which are available. So these are called as different domains, which means computation is one domain, storage is one domain, analytics is another domain. So it's just like a category of services. All right, and then inside these domains we are going to learn what are different services which are available, okay, which are available in Azure. And next point which we are going to talk about is the different pricing options. Now I can tell you from my experience that people who haven't worked on any cloud platform, they simply get scared to touch a cloud platform because they don't know how the pricing is going to work out. Okay, so when I was a beginner with the cloud, I came to cloud and I saw that if I go and create a storage account, then how much I'm going to be charged for it. Okay, so that is a major concern which people have. So if I'll create something, how much I'll be charged for it, or if I forget to switch it off, how much I'm going to be charged for it because I'm putting my credit card, right? So that is important for me to understand what are the different pricing options which are available. All right, so one person saying I'm in mute. So is everyone, again, just cross-checking before we begin? Can everyone hear me clearly? Yeah, okay. All right. All right, so yes, people can hear me clearly. So after the pricing options, I'm just going to do a walkthrough of the Azure portal, so you guys feel comfortable about it. And then if you guys have any questions about the Azure certifications or the courses, feel free to ask. We are going to answer that as well. Okay, so everybody fine? So let's get started now with what is cloud. So as I was saying earlier that cloud was supposed to be a jargon some time back, and now it's a very common word, and everybody is moving towards the cloud. Now what exactly is cloud computing? Okay, so cloud computing is something where you can have some kind of resources created in a different location. Okay, very simple, just putting it very simply. So for example, if you want to create a virtual machine, okay, for example, you have your laptop and you have a virtual machine running on top of it, right? In the same way, I need one machine which is sitting at a remote location. I don't want to have the infrastructure. I don't want to pay for that infrastructure or pay for all the software. Some resource sitting in a different location. I just want to go and access that resource. And whatever I'm accessing, I'm ready to pay for it. So if I'm using a particular virtual machine for 10 minutes, I want to pay for 10 minutes. I don't want to pay for a very long time. I'm just going to use it for 10 minutes and and pay only for those 10 minutes. Okay, so this is what is called as cloud computing, which means the resources are sitting at a different location and I'm going to access that on demand on a pay per use basis. So if you see the statement, it says cloud computing is the delivery of on-demand resources, which means whenever I need, I'm going to get access to those resources over the internet on a pay for use basis. I'm going to use it for 10 minutes. I'm only going to pay for 10 minutes. Okay, so this is what is called as cloud computing. Now, some of you might be thinking, what is the benefit of going through cloud computing? We already have some resources in the on-prem environment. My corporate network has a lot of physical servers. There is cooling, there are racks which are available, all the storage is there, all the machines are there. Why do I need to go to the cloud computing platform? Okay, so the benefit of moving towards the cloud computing is, number one, is about cost. So if you have, let's take a scenario here. So the scenario is, let's say I'm building a e-commerce application. So I have got 10 servers which is handling my e-commerce application. Now I see that after 2 months the festive season is coming up. Now 2 months down the line the festive season is coming up, which means there would be a lot of users that will be coming and hitting my e-commerce application. So to make sure that my application scales out well, what do I do? I'm going to raise a purchase order. I'm going to get the infrastructure. I'm going to put that in my data center. I'm going to, make the cooling available, do all the setup, do all the networking stuff, all that activity I need to do in order to make sure that my e-commerce application scales out well after 2 months. Okay, and this is where I'm spending money on buying the infrastructure, for setting up the networking, setting up my cooling and all that stuff, all that thing I need to do in my on-prem environment. Now, if I'm in the cloud, the cost is one of the factors that is going to play here, which means that I don't need to provision anything beforehand. I'm only going to pay for what I use. Even during the festive season, if I have 10 servers and I want to scale to 20 servers, I'm going to pay that only when the festive season comes up. Okay, so this means that no hardware needs to be purchased, no software needs to be purchased and running. We don't even need a data center for running it, right? So this is the major benefit of cost that comes up. The second major benefit is about speed. Now, we talked about the e-commerce application. The festive season has come up and I actually made provision for 20 servers. Now suddenly I see that there are a lot more users which are coming up, which is not even expected. How do I handle that? So, which means that if I have to scale out, I need the speed of scaling as well. So how I can do that? I can do that in the cloud with just few clicks. Okay, so if I have to scale my application, or if I have to provision some resources, only thing I need to do is just do few clicks and my resources will be available. Okay, so I don't need to do any kind of capacity planning, which means I don't need to think about how many extra servers I need, how many ACs I need to do the cooling or all that stuff. The only thing I can do, just go to the portal, say I want a new VM or I want 10 more VMs. Just click on it. Within few seconds, the resources will be available. Okay, that is a major benefit of moving towards any cloud platform. So we have, it's not just about Azure. You can go on AWS, you can go on Google Cloud Provider. All these cloud providers are going to give you the same features. Okay, the next important thing is about global scaling. So global scaling means that if I want to, so let's say I'm sitting in India and my customers are sitting in US. So if I go ahead and create my data center in India, this means that if my US customers are connecting to it, there will be a lot of latency and there will be a lot of slowness in connecting to my applications. Now, if I have to make a data center in US, I need to have a team there. I need to set up everything there, and then only I can create my data center there and let my users connect to it. So this is financially not viable. Okay, so what do we do in this case? We use a cloud computing platform which provides us with global scale, which means that if I have got users in India, I've got users in UK, I've got users in US, I can provision resources in all these different locations and they all can work with their local resources. Alright, so this is the benefit of using cloud computing platform, that it provides you the ability to go and provision your resources in any location of the world where you want. The next important point is about productivity. Now, if I have to do this setup again for my e-commerce application, getting a lot of servers in my on-premises or corporate network, I have to get the hardware, do all the networking, do all the setup. So all these things actually lowers down our productivity. Now, if you go to the cloud, you don't have to worry about all these factors, and this actually increases your productivity a lot, which means you can now focus on your business applications, on what you want to deliver to the business, instead of how do you want the hardware to be set up, how do you want software to be set up, and all those things. Okay, so your IT teams can focus on setting up your business goals instead of focusing on the infrastructure things. Right, and that is why you will also see that in the market right now there are a lot of people, while the companies have started moving towards the cloud, they are saving on the cost, but then this also means that people are losing jobs. People are losing jobs because there is very less work now on the cloud to manage the hardware and the software. Okay, so there is very less of administration activity. Now for people, that is why I was saying that this is a good step that you guys are taking to move towards the cloud, so that you do not have to so that you are not left behind while people are moving towards the cloud. So it's a good way that you move towards the cloud, start learning about different Azure services or any cloud computing platform services, and that can help you stay up current in the market and your productivity, so that companies can utilize your uh, your talent in much better way. Okay, the next point comes up is about performance. I think I have already spoken about slightly on the performance. Now consider that if you have your customers are sitting in US, your data center is in India, there is definitely a performance problem, because all the traffic has flow from US to India to serve your customers. That is why with cloud computing platform you can provision your resources in any location which is near to your customers, and that is why the performance is much faster. The second important point is that if you want to scale your application, let's say if you have your e-commerce application, suddenly the demand has increased, so you can, or at the runtime, you can increase your performance of your application by adding more and more servers. All right, and the last point is about reliability. Now, many people think that the cloud is not reliable, but I can tell you that it's a total myth. The reason for that is that cloud is much more reliable as compared to your on-prem environment. The reason for that is that in your on-prem, you have a single data center. All your resources are present inside the data center, and if God forbid any kind of disaster that happens, all your data, all your applications, or all kind of things might get lost. Another important point is that if, let's say, there is some kind of power failure in your region or in your data center region, right? So if you're running your data center in India, if there is a power failure, what will you do? So at that point of time, all your applications, all your resources are not available. In the same way, let's say you are building not just an e-commerce application, but a trading application. Now you can understand how critical is a trading application. So in those kind of things, if your data center goes down, your application is not available, which means your customers is going to come up and it's going to look for your neck. The reason for that is that they are losing money. So that is why it is very important that your applications are very reliable. And once you move to the cloud, the reliability of your application increases a lot. Why? Because it's not just about so you can run your applications in multiple locations. That's one thing. Then other thing is you can even take your backups and store it in a different location. So this would mean that if a failure happens in one data center, your data is still secure and available in a different data center. Okay, so that is why moving towards the cloud provides you much more reliability. But of course, if you're looking for all these factors, you have to start thinking about how the cloud computing works. You have to think about different architectures, you have to think about different design patterns and all that stuff. Once you understand those things in detail, then it will be very easy for you to make any application in the cloud and make it reliable, available, scalable, and it is going to be cost effective. Okay, makes sense everyone? So this is just a beginning of what are different benefits of using a cloud computing platform. All right, so let's go forward now and let's see what are the different cloud deployment models are available. Now, some of you, or in fact, most of you might be knowing that you have your network in your on-premises, or if you have a network in your corporate network, right? So there's a corporate network which is there, and all your resources are sitting inside that particular corporate network. Now that is something is called as a private cloud. You can call it as a private cloud, or if you don't want to call it as a cloud, then it's your private network. Okay, the same kind of private network which you have in your corporate environment, you can actually create that same network inside the cloud, and that is called as a virtual private cloud. So whatever is there in your on-prem environment, you take all those resources, which means your virtual machines, your storage accounts, or different types of services which are there. You can take the whole stuff, in fact even the Active Directory, Active Directory domains, and all that information or whatever you have in the corporate network, you can take the whole network and you can move it to the cloud, which is called as a virtual private cloud. Okay, and if you don't want to do this activity, you don't want to take your whole corporate network to the cloud, what can you do? You can create a hybrid cloud, or basically you can create a hybrid connectivity between your on-premises environment and the cloud environment, which means your applications can sit in your let's take an example. Your application can sit in your corporate network, but your data sits in your cloud network. Okay, or the other way around. So you can keep some services in the cloud and you can keep some services in the private cloud, or which means your on-prem network. And this is how you can build your you already have your private networks, which is called private cloud. You can build the same stuff in the cloud, which is the virtual private cloud. And in the cloud, basically the cloud is called as a public cloud as well. Okay, and you can make connections between your public cloud and your on-prem network, and that can make your hybrid cloud. Okay, so these are different deployment models which are available to you. So it's not something that if you already have a lot of applications in your on-prem environment and you want to move it to the cloud, so it's a big challenge. Of course, there is some challenge involved, but then that does not mean that you have to write everything from scratch. You can take your existing resources, you can keep some of them on-prem, and you can keep some of them in the cloud. Okay, so I have seen people moving towards, start using the Azure storage in cloud, which means that whatever archive data they have, they can keep it in the cloud, and whenever it's required, they can download it, or they can even keep their live data in the cloud and their applications are running on-prem. Okay, so this is the kind of network which you can develop using the different cloud deployment models. All right. Okay, now let's talk about why do we need Microsoft Azure. So Microsoft Azure is something, now we have already talked about the different, what is cloud computing, and how do you make the hybrid clouds and all that stuff. Now let's understand what is it that Azure provides us. The first thing that we should note is that Azure provides us with more than 100+ services. Now what is a service here? Services called virtual machine is a service, storage account is a service, then we have the cognitive service, that is also a service. We have the Azure Active Directory, that is also a service. So all these are called as different services in the cloud. Right now it is saying, I'm saying 100+ services, but I can tell you that it is approximately 150 right now. And with time, there are lots and lots of services which are being added on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so these are services using which you can build your whole architecture, your whole applications. Okay. Another important point to note is that it is available in more than 54 regions. Now what is the region here? In one country there can be multiple regions, like in India there can be a Central India region, South India region, or West India region. In US it could be West US region, West US 2 region, East US region, East US 2 region, Central US. Now all these are called different regions. Inside a single region there can be multiple data centers. Now imagine this scenario. We have got 54 regions and each region can have either one data center or 3 data centers. So you can imagine that right now Microsoft might be having close to 100+ different data centers for managing the Azure cloud platform. So you can think about the scale at which the Azure is going forward, and in fact the AWS as well. So they are going forward and building so many data centers so you can serve your customers where they are located. So if I'm sitting in India, I don't need to deploy my application in India region. I can deploy my application in US region, because if my customers are in US, it will be much faster for them to connect to those resources. All right. Then important point is that it is available right now in 140 different countries, which means that users from 140 different countries can set up an Azure subscription and can set up their accounts. All right. One important point which I wanted to show you here is this was actually taken, I think, 3 months back. So one good question from one guest, he's saying that does cost varies region wise? Yes, it does. In some cases the cost is very similar, but there could be slight differences that totally depends on basically the region you are selecting. So of course there would be slight variation in the cost. So you can go ahead, look for the cost region wise, and can decide on where you want to keep your resources. Okay, but I think the region should not be the only, I mean the cost should not be only factor based on which you should decide your region. The region should be decided where your customers sit. All right. This is one picture which was there, I think some 3 or 4 months back, so which I picked up, which says that Microsoft beats Amazon in 12-month cloud revenue. The idea here is not to show you where is like Microsoft has beaten AWS. That's not the idea here. The idea here is to show you that both of these providers are actually the market leaders. And in fact, if you see the amount of revenue, $26.7 billion. So $26.7 billion in 1 year, it's a big number. So you can imagine the scale at which these companies are earning. And why are they earning? Because there are a lot of companies who are moving towards the cloud. Okay. The other important figure I want to show you may not be very clear to you guys, but what you see here is this is a a chart from Gartner, and Gartner says that Microsoft and AWS are the leaders in cloud computing platform. In fact, Google is there as well as a leader, but AWS and Microsoft are way ahead. In fact, these companies are growing, or these Azure and AWS, they are growing at like 50%, 60% to up. Even Azure has grown up to 90% quarter by quarter, and you can imagine how fast they are growing. All right, so that is why it is very important for us as as employees of different companies to start learning more and more Azure, because you will never know when your company switches to Azure or AWS. Right? The one other important figure which I want to show you is, now that we know that what is the total revenue for 1 quarter, $26.7 billion. But this is something which is some kind of the revenue which has already been earned, and what is the projected revenue. Now, if you look at, for example, IaaS services, now IaaS is called as infrastructure as a service. Okay, which means you just want to buy the infrastructure in the cloud, not buy, but you want to subscribe to the infrastructure in the cloud. And you can see here, it was $30 billion in 2017. And by 2021, it is going to touch $83.5 billion. Approximately, it is within 4 years, it is going to increase 3 times. So you can see that how fast the people are moving towards the cloud. Okay, the same with other services. For example, platform as a service, which is called PaaS, it was $11.9 billion in 2017. It is going to approximately be more than double by 2021. And the same thing you can see for SaaS services, $60 billion in 2017, which includes like cognitive services and all that stuff. $60 billion, it will be touching $117 billion. So that is the scale of cloud environment which you are seeing right now. Right now we are in 2019. By 2021, the things are going to double up. So there are lots more companies who are moving towards the cloud. All right. The last figure which I want to show you here is, this is what I have picked up from Azure. And what you see here is that these are what you see in the blue circles. These are different regions which Microsoft Azure has. So I talked about 54 different regions. So this is what you can see in the diagram. You can see there is in South India, Central India, West India. Then we have East US. We have got West US, West US 2, Central US. Then we have in Norway. We have Europe, we have in China, and then we have in Japan. So all these are different regions which are available to us. All right. So that's all I had for the Microsoft Azure. But now let's see what are the features it provides. So Azure, it has been increasing a lot, as I said earlier. So it provides you with different PaaS capabilities. Now PaaS is called as a platform as a service, which means that the services are ready-made available for us. You go ahead, pay for it, and run your application. Now let's say that if you want to run your web application, okay, what do? In normal on-premises environment, you go and set up a machine, or you have a virtual machine. Then you go and in those virtual machines, you have your OS set up and everything. Then you go and deploy your web application there, provide the IP address and other stuff, and you can connect to it. Right? But in Microsoft Azure, you have another platform service called web application. So you don't need to know about the infrastructure, you don't even need to provision it. You can simply go to the cloud. You don't even have access to the underlying virtual machines. What you only have, you have a portal where you go and deploy your application, and that's it. So that using that portal, once you deploy your application, it is going to be scalable, it is going to be reliable, it is going to be very, very secure. Okay, so this is the kind of PaaS capabilities which are not available in, it's not available in too many cloud platforms, but this is available in Azure. The other important point is if you guys are coming from .NET background, there is a lot of .NET compatibility between Azure and .NET, but let me also iterate on this point and make it very clear that it's not just .NET that is compatible. If you're coming from Windows environment, if you're coming from Linux environment, you can set up Windows machines, you can set up Linux machines, you can use any kind of operating system here. Plus, if you are using .NET, if you are using Java, if you are using Python, any kind of language if you want to work with is supported in Azure. The other important point to note is that if you have got if you want to have any kind of any platform that you can go ahead want to use, you are free to use that. In fact, till recently there was one number that came out which is that Linux VMs are 54% of the total VMs created on Azure, which means 54% VMs that are created on Azure are Linux VMs. So you can think about this, that even if you're not coming from Microsoft or .NET background, then also Azure is a place to go. The reason for that, people are creating lots and lots of Linux VMs. They are not creating Windows VMs. They are not using .NET. Of course, people are using it, but then not all the people are using .NET or Windows. People are using Linux. They are using Tomcat. They are using Python. All that stuff is available on Azure. So this is what you need to remember, and do not think that Azure is only for .NET developers or for people who are coming from Microsoft background. All right. The other important point is that there are a lot of security offerings. Like once we go forward in the slides, I'm going to show you the different security options which are available. And next point is about hybrid solutions. So if you remember from the previous slide, in fact, of the cloud deployment model, so we mentioned that you can create your hybrid solution, which means your web application can reside on your on-prem network and your storage can reside on your cloud network. Okay, so this is a kind of hybrid solution you can create, and it is very, very easy to connect all of them. Okay, so you don't have to do too much of activity to make your on-prem resources connect to your cloud resources. It is a very seamless and very easy operation. Okay, the next is about the integrated environment, which means that if you want to use Visual Studio, if you want to use Eclipse, if you want to use IntelliJ, all these SDKs for all these different IDs are available. You can simply go ahead and start using it. So whatever people are doing in Visual Studio, the same features are available in Eclipse or IntelliJ or other different IDs. Okay, so it is a very integrated environment. You can go and start using it. All right. Curve is very gentle. So of course, if you just kind of walk through a particular course, or in fact, you can go and do some hands-on, you will start learning about Azure. But I would suggest you that if you just want to, quickly jump and learn more and more about how to architect your application or how to design your solutions, you can go ahead and talk about, let's do a crash course and understand what is Azure. Okay, but even if you so that's totally up to you. You can decide on how do you want to proceed with it. But the idea here is that the curve is very gentle, which means you don't have to dramatically learn a totally new concept in order to work with the cloud computing platform. All right. And the last point is that if people are coming from Microsoft background and they already have the enterprise agreements, this is where you're going to get a lot of advantage, which means you do not have to pay more. You'll be paying very less in order to use the Azure. All right. So these are different benefits of Azure. And so now let's talk about what is the current job trends. Now, what you see here is just a small figure which tells you that starting 2014, the number of jobs have been increasing exponentially. Now, this figure is still 2017 because we didn't have the numbers for 2018 yet. So In 2018 also, the jobs are growing for the different cloud platforms exponentially. So if you will see in different job requirements, people will ask that you should have some prior knowledge on Azure or AWS or any kind of cloud provider. So Azure is one place where people who are coming from from Microsoft background, they'll see that people are asking for Azure. But as I said, there is no such requirement of people coming from Microsoft background. They only can work with Azure. Everybody or anybody can work with Azure cloud platform. All right. So this is the kind of job trend we are seeing right now. A lot of requirements are coming from jobs, and I think Sapna will also be explaining you slightly on more on the job trends. She'll tell you that how the jobs are increasing in this particular area. All right. Guys, I see there are few 3-4 questions which are there. So just hold on to your questions. So I'm going to answer all of them, but just want to make sure that we run through some of these things and then we'll talk about that. Okay, so do not worry that your questions are not being answered. Just hold on to your questions. We are going to come back and discuss more about it. Okay, all right. So we have already talked about what is Microsoft Azure. Now let me tell you what are the different domains in Azure. Okay, so when I was saying domains, this means these are simply categories in Azure. I can also show that to you in the portal. So in Azure, you have got a lot of different categories under which a lot of different services exist. For example, if you have a compute domain, which means that you want to do some computation, what do? You require either a virtual machine or you require some kind of infrastructure on which you can go and run your application. So that is called as compute, right? Then we have storage. So which means that if I have to store my data, what are different storage options which are available? All right. Okay, so these are different domains. Now we are going to specifically talk about all these domains. An important point for us to remember is that these are not the only domains in Azure, which means these are not the only categories in Azure, but these are some of the common categories. So you can go ahead and see, I can also show that to you in the portal, that there are lots and lots of categories which are available. For example, analytics, and these kinds of categories which you need to know about. Okay, but we are going to only touch upon the basic or the most common categories which are available. Okay, so I know that few more questions are there, but one last question I saw is, can you explain more on the compute? Sure, just hold on for a second, because we are going to talk about all these different domains right now. Okay. All right, so now let's do a deep dive and understand what are the different services available in each and every domain. Okay. Let's talk about the Azure Compute Service. Now, what is an Azure Compute Service? Something which is required to execute our application. Now you require some CPU, you require some RAM, you require some kind of virtual machines, servers basically to run your application. So that is what is called as a compute. Okay, let's see what are the different feature services available in compute. We have got virtual machines. You can simply create a machine in the cloud. Then we have got something called as virtual machine scale sets. Okay, so what is a virtual machine scale set? Now, scale set is a service in Azure which helps you create hundreds of different virtual machines which are identical and which can scale automatically. Okay, this means that tomorrow if my e-commerce requirement is growing and I see that suddenly there is a lot of demand that has come in, what do? In that case, I'm going to create a virtual machine scale set. Using the scale set, it can auto scale based on certain conditions. It can even remove the resources if they are not being used. So if I have got, let's say, 10 machines right now and there is more demand coming in, I'm going to spin up automatically 2 more machines and add it to the scale set. Okay, and all this is being done automatically. So once you set up the configuration, it can automatically take up the scaling activity, or it can take up the scaling in, scaling out, and also do the load balancing. Okay, so some of the concepts might be totally new to you, but this is just about letting you know that scale set is one place where you can auto scale your virtual machines. Okay, this is the only point you need to remember. The reason for that is that you should now able to identify, or now you should be able to imagine, if you have got 100 different virtual machines in the cloud, how easy it is to set up and configure. So with just few configuration options, you can go ahead and create 100 different virtual machines with exactly the same configuration, and you can run your application on top of those 100 virtual machines. Okay. Uh, then we have the Azure containers. Now, like some of you might be knowing about Docker, we have got Docker, which is a container-based, it's a container-based software. Then we have to orchestrate those Docker containers, we have got container registry. Then we have got Azure Kubernetes services. So if you have heard about Kubernetes or stuff like that before, so all these stuff are also available in Azure. Okay, some of people are saying no, they haven't heard about it. So in case you go for any course, we are going to cover in detail on what is a Docker, what are containers, what is a Docker, what is container registries, and then what are Kubernetes services. So all these things we're going to cover inside once you go inside and start learning about Azure. Okay, makes sense. So we cannot explain right now what is a Docker, how does container work, because that's a whole it's a very big topic. But this is just to tell you that if you have heard about containers before, so this is something is available in Azure out of the box, and you can you can go and start using it. Okay. The other important point is that we only talked about virtual machines, which is like provisioning an infrastructure. Now, if you want to simply create one function in the cloud, okay, so let's say if I have one small function which deletes the data from my database at the end of the day. Let's say if I do some archival of the data at the end of the day. So do I need to set up a VM, install an application there which is going to connect to the database and do this? No, I can go ahead and simply deploy one single function in the cloud. So if you have got one function saying public static, let's say archive data, and that's it. In that function, you write some code to connect to the database and do some archival activity. That is something you can build in the cloud. You don't need to have a full-fledged application running on top of a VM to do that stuff. You can simply deploy a single function in the cloud. Okay, people who are coming from dev background, they must be able to understand this. If you have multiple functions, you got multiple APIs, I can deploy a single API in the cloud. Okay, then we have some batch related services which you can do some batch processing. Then we have a very important platform called Service Fabric. Now, Service Fabric is just a platform. It can be deployed on AWS, it can be deployed on Azure, and it can even be deployed on-premises environment. What do we need here? We just need to download this SDK and work with it. But I can tell you that if you want to build microservices architecture, this is one of the best places to go and build it. But why it is useful to build it on Azure and not maybe on-prem? Because Azure provides a lot of native integration with the Service Fabric platform. Okay, so of course I'm going slightly faster on all these different services. If you guys have any question related to any particular service, feel free to ask and I'm going to answer that. Okay, alright, so these are different cloud compute services which are available, and let's see what are the different other options which are available. The different options which are available is for different services which are available is for networking. Now, let me go and show you straight away what are the different networking options which are available. Let's say you have your on-prem environment. Okay, you have your on-prem network. Now, if you want to have the same network in the cloud, which I earlier called it as virtual private cloud, you can do it by simply creating a virtual network in the cloud. Now, in your on-prem, if you have to set up a virtual network, or in fact, if you have to set up a network, it's a big task. But in the cloud, it's just a matter of seconds. You go ahead and create a virtual network. So if you want to set up firewall on this virtual network, you can do it. If you want to create some inbound rules, outbound rules, right? So all this setup you can do inside a virtual network. Okay, and if you want to make a connection between your on-prem network and the cloud network, which is called virtual network, you can use hybrid connectivity. So all these connectivity options are also available in Azure, which means that if you want to build a new application, you can do it in the cloud. But if you have some resources which are available on premises, you can do a hybrid connectivity between your on-prem environment and your cloud environment, and some resources can sit in the cloud, some resources can sit in the on-prem, and they both can connect to each other. Okay, so makes sense. Networking is again a big concept in Azure, which means there are lots and lots of services which are available, using which you can connect your on-prem to the cloud, or you can build your secure environment in the cloud. Okay. Then there are multiple load balancing. I hope you guys might have heard about load balancing. Now, load balancing is something which can distribute your traffic to multiple different resources, which means that if you have got one application, so somebody saying my voice is breaking, is it okay for everyone, or is it breaking? Okay, so people are saying, a couple of people are saying, so couple of people are saying, yeah, it's clear. Some I think a couple of people are saying that it's breaking as well. So guys, I got the point. Let me know if the voice is breaking. I can repeat that stuff. All right. Okay. So what we see here is you can, let's say if you have your application deployed on multiple machines. Okay, you have a lot of VMs on which you have deployed your same application. Now you want to make sure that your load is distributed on multiple virtual machines. Okay, what do you do in that case? You create a load balancer. Okay, so when you have a load balancer, there are multiple load balancing options which are available in Azure, which is called, one is the load balancer, the other one is called as application gateway, and then we have something called as traffic manager. Okay. Okay, is one person only saying that the screen is not visible and the voice is not clear? Because some people are saying it is available and clear. Okay, guys, I would encourage you to also put your name in front of your question so that I can, I can address you as well. Okay, so a lot of people saying yes, it is clear. So for people who is not clear, so let me know, guys, if you missed something, I can repeat that stuff again. Okay, so as part of the load balancing options, we have got multiple load balancing, multiple load balancing options which are available. One is the load balancer, then we have the application gateway, and third one is called as a traffic manager. Okay, so these are different options which are available in Azure to do load balancing of different applications. Okay, then we have something called as VPN gateway. Now, if you know that if you from your home, if you connect to your corporate network, what do? In that case, you actually connect to the VPN of your company, right? In the same way, if you want to set up a VPN in the cloud, I can so basically it's a very simple task to set up a VPN in the cloud, which means you can secure from your home machine. You can connect to your virtual network in the cloud using VPN, and it's hardly a matter of seconds to set up a VPN gateway, which means that now, just like your corporate network is secure with the VPN, in the same way your virtual network in the cloud can also be made secure by using VPN. And in on-prem, it is a really big task to set that up, while in the cloud it's a very simple task. Okay, so I just wrapped up a batch, and the people were really interested to see that how easy it is for people to just go and create a VPN gateway using which they can simply connect to the cloud using VPN. Okay. All right, so these are the different services which are available in networking. Of course, there is something called as Azure DNS. So if you have let's say if you have your own domain name and you want to use your domain name for your application, you can set it up using Azure DNS. All right, and lastly, if you want to have a very secure connectivity, let me also use a pointer here. So if you want to have a very secure connectivity between your on-prem and your cloud network, then you use something called as Express Route. Now this is a dedicated private connection which is available to you from different service providers. For example, Airtel, from AT&T, Verizon, Reliance Jio, Vodafone. So all these are different providers which are available, which give you a private dedicated line to Azure. Okay, so this is what is provided by Express Route. So once you set up an Express Route, you get a private dedicated line using which you don't have to route your traffic to from the internet. You can simply route your traffic from a dedicated the line which is provided by your service provider. Okay, so these are different networking options which are available inside Azure. Of course, there are much more than that, but this is just some of the basic options or some of the most used services which are available to us. Okay, so we have got, you can set up a virtual network to complete network in the cloud. You can have multiple load balancing options like load balancer, application gateway, and traffic manager. And then we have got the VPN setup in the cloud. You can set up the domain name service, which means you can use your own domains in the cloud, or you can build your content delivery network. Okay, so what is a content delivery network here? So CDN is something which can help you move your data to multiple geographical locations. Let's say if you have got a video, okay, and your customers are sitting in, okay, so let's say your customers are sitting in the US, India, UK. Okay, so all these three different places your customers want to look at your video. Will it make sense that if I host the video only in India and people are streaming the data from US or streaming the data from UK? So if there are lots of views which are coming up from US, it will not make sense for me to actually host the video in India, right? But then now I also have the India customers. So how do I balance all this? So to balance all this, I have got one more feature called content delivery network, which means that I can take my single video, I can host it in multiple different regions like US, UK, India. The copy is still one. Okay, but internally it is going to create multiple copies of my video and keep it in multiple different locations, so that my US customer is only hitting the US location, the UK customer is only hitting the UK location, and India customer is only hitting the India location. So that will give them a good experience with my video, right? So this is what is provided by content delivery network. Okay, so I'm just kind of scratching the surface of all these services. Once we go inside and learn more about these services, you will see how they practically work. Okay, and how easy it is for us to set up these services and make sure that our customers get a really good experience. Okay, now let's see what other options are available. Now, this is about networking services. Then we have the storage services. Now this is pretty simple to understand, that storage service is something where we can store our data. Okay, so Azure provides us with a lot of different functionalities or a lot of different services using which we can store our data. Now Azure Storage is one service, then we have the Azure Data Lake as the other service, and then we have some RDBMS or the database options also. Okay, so we are going to talk about database option, but then Azure Storage is a service using which you can store lots and lots of data. Okay, in fact, let me tell you as an example that in blob storage, which you see here, you can have one single file of 4.76 terabytes. Okay, that's how big the file sizes you can store in Azure Blob Storage. But if you are worried about what is the data security, what is the reliability of your data, are you going to take backups or you are taking snapshots? So all these features have been by default built into Azure Storage, which means backups you want to take anytime, you can do it. If you want to take snapshots of your files, you can do it. If you want to make your files available at different locations, so the content delivery network that we talked about, that can be used from blob storage, and you can store files as big as 4.76 terabytes. One single file of approximately 4.75 terabytes, which is a big file. Okay, and it is going to make sure that your file is available even in case of disasters. Okay, so it is not just about the blob storage, you also have something called as queue storage. So there are multiple types of messaging patterns that you would want to build. So tomorrow if you want to build a messaging infrastructure, this is one option which you can use to store your messages. So you can use the Azure queue storage, and then inside that you can store lots of messages, and on the other hand you want to take out the message and work with it, you can do that. So this is not the only queue storage which is available. We also have service bus, which is available as part of the messaging infrastructure. Okay, I hope you guys are able to follow this stuff. We have talked about compute, where you saw virtual machines and all that information. Then we talked about networking, where we saw how we can create a virtual network, how we can do hybrid connectivity, how we can use the content delivery network. So all that stuff, and then how you can do the load balancing. And now in storage, as part of the storage domain, you can go ahead and store huge number of files which are going to be there for you always, which means that even if there is a disaster that happens, then also your files are going to be safe and secure. So you can reliably store your data and can reliably retrieve your data anytime. Okay. So along with the queue storage, now in blob storage you can go and store all kinds of blobs which are called binary large object. But in case of files, you can simply go ahead and store lots and lots of files, which means, let's say if your organization has a lot of software, so you can put all the software in one single drive, okay, inside the Azure file storage, and then everybody can go and attach that drive as a network drive. Okay, so you might have seen this scenario before. So you have a network drive. Inside the network drive, you will have lots of files available, and that will be available to all the users in your organization. So this is something you can do with the Azure file storage. All right, and last point is about the table storage. If you want to create, very simple table structure, this is not the RDBMS. Remember, this is not relational databases. This is simply a small table structure, just like Excel. If you want to store some tabular data, you can go and store it in the table storage. Okay. Let me go forward now and talk about the different web and mobile services. Now can you see this overall picture? We have got something related to infrastructure. We have got machines and all that stuff. We also have got services related to networking. We have seen the services related to storage, and now we are seeing services related to web and mobile, which means if you want to build your mobile applications, what do you need? You need some mobile infrastructure. You also need the notifications as part of your mobile, as part of your mobile application. You can use this, or in fact you can use the Azure search in your mobile application. Okay, so these are the kind of things you can configure to build your mobile application. Now if you as I was saying earlier, so if you simply want to deploy your web application in the cloud without having to worry about the infrastructure, what you can do, you can use something called as web applications, which means you simply go ahead in the cloud and say, I want to deploy a web application. You don't have to worry about the infrastructure. You can select what kind of basically the web server you need. You can select Tomcat, you can select IIS. All this can be selected using web apps. You simply deploy your application there and you're done. Okay, so guys, some of you might be coming from, might have worked with sites like GoDaddy. So what happens in GoDaddy? You go and say that I want to host an application, a very small application. So what do? They give you a space where they will say that this is my control panel. Using the control panel, you upload a site, right? So I'm going to go there, upload the site, and that's it. I don't know where is the hardware, what is the infrastructure, and what is the underlying web server and all that stuff. I don't have access to that. I simply go ahead and deploy my web application there from the control panel. Now this is the same stuff you can do with the web apps, which means you don't have anything to worry about the infrastructure, the patching of those machines. Like if you have got Windows updates or anything, you don't have to patch those stuff. If you want to build it on Linux, you want to build it on Windows, you can do that. You want to build on Java, .NET, Python, all these different environments you can select and build your application. Just deploy your application using web apps. Okay, this is one of the most important and interesting aspect of Azure, using which people have like small companies or smaller applications that you are creating. You don't have to worry about the infra. You simply go ahead and deploy your application, and you get lots and lots of control, which you are not getting in the GoDaddy environment. Now that's a very small service, but web application provides you with really granular control. If you want to do some performance testing, load testing, all these features are available in web apps. Okay, so we can take some time and do some demo on that, right? So we can try that as well if the time permits. Then you can build the mobile applications. Then you can build simply the APIs in the cloud. So if you have got web services, you have got some REST APIs, all that stuff can be built inside the API apps. Okay, next two important points is about, number one is about logic app. So if you have got a, let's say if you want to build a workflow. Now some of you might have heard about Windows Workflow Foundation, right? So that is one way of building a workflow. Also, if you just want to build a simple workflow saying start, do this activity, if yes, do this, if not, do this. So all those kinds of things can actually be created using logic app. So you can create a whole workflow in a visual designer using logic app. So if you don't know how to write the code, or if you are not coming from dev background but you still want to create your whole workflow, you can use logic app to design your visual workflow. Okay, so this is what you can do in Azure. The last important point is that we have got something called as event hubs. Now what is an event hub? Let's say there are now before we do that, we have to understand the difference between what is an event and what is a message. So message is something, for example, if I am sending you a text message, so my assumption is, or my understanding is, that you are going to read that message. Okay, that is why a message is important. So if I'm sending you an email, that is a message. That is why we call it as a email message, right? So that is an message carries much more importance as compared to an event. Okay, now what is an event here? If I am come here and if I start rotating my mouse, or even if I start doing all this, so behind the scene there are a lot of events that are getting generated. Okay, now it is up to the receiver. If the receiver wants to receive these events and process it, that's up to the receiver. If the receiver does not want to use these events, that's up to the receiver again. But the sender or the creator of the events is not worried about if anybody is consuming it or not. But in case of message, the sender of the message, like email message, if you are sending out an email to me, you are a sender of the email message, so you are concerned that I should read it. Okay, so that is the difference between an event and a message. So we have got a service in Azure called Event Hubs. Now what is an event hub? This particular service can handle millions of events per second. So let's say you have got let's say you have built a small device for refrigerator. Okay, you have embedded that device in the refrigerator. Let's say you are working for a company who creates these small IoT devices, and they embed that as part of the refrigerator itself. Now refrigerator is generating lots of events. Is the cooling proper? Is the flow of pressure is good enough? So all these kinds of different events which are being generated every second by the refrigerator. And you can imagine the scale. There could be millions of refrigerators out there in the market for a particular company. Now if the chip has been embedded, now those refrigerators will be sending out all the events to us, okay, in the cloud. Now there could be millions of events that are coming per second, and Event Hub is the place which can handle all those events. Now of course, if you don't want to consume those events, that's up to you. If you want to figure out some some interesting information from that, you can do it. If you only want to consume some limited events, you can do that. Just like in your local machine or your laptop, you have an event viewer, right? So in the event viewer, you can see that whatever is happening, all the events are getting generated. Now if you want to consume those events, that's up to you, but Windows is saying I'm just putting those events. If you want to use it, if you want to read it, you want to see it, you can do that. If you don't want to do it, that's up to you, right? In the same way, we can have millions of events coming in the event hub, but there are a lot more services available to consume those events and make proper sense out of it. Okay, if you want to see the pattern, you can do that. If you want to do some predictions, you can do that. So all this can happen via event hub. Okay, so this is one service which is available as part of the web plus mobile services. Okay, and this actually also belongs to the messaging infrastructure. All right. Okay, and let's see. Yeah, so this is one common area, Azure Database Services. Now, I hope that you guys will be very interested to know about the different database options which are available in Azure. So first thing is about what you see here is the SQL databases. Now, SQL database, everybody knows that Microsoft has provided its own database product called SQL Server. Now, if you go to Azure, you can use SQL Server, you can use MySQL as a service, you can use a PostgreSQL as a service, which means you go to the portal and say, I want to create a new PostgreSQL database. And it will going to create a PostgreSQL database in the cloud, which is totally secure. Okay, just remember, security is an important aspect, and this is being provided by default out of the box to all the services. Okay, so you can create a PostgreSQL in the cloud and you can start working with it. Along with all these services, like with SQL, along with like SQL Server, Postgre, and the MySQL, if you want to deploy Oracle, you can have a virtual machine and you can deploy the Oracle there, but Oracle is not available out of the box as a service. Maybe in the future, Azure can come up with another service called Oracle as a service. All right. Then we have another database options like we have got Azure SQL Data Warehouse, which is a MPP architect based on MPP architecture, which is called Massive Parallel Processing Architecture. Okay, so that is something for real fast execution. In fact, as compared to SQL databases, that can be like 100 times faster. Okay, it's really fast. Okay, I have done a lot of work on SQL Data Warehouse and all those different MPP architectures, so I can tell you for sure that the performance is really great. Okay, so that is another service which is available in Azure. Now, let's see, some of you guys might have heard about Parallel Data Warehouse. That was a product from Microsoft. Now that Parallel Data Warehouse has actually gone into the cloud with the name of SQL Data Warehouse, and it has a lot more improvements. Okay, now these are all the relational options you see here. Okay, these are all the relational options, SQL databases. Then we have the NoSQL options in the form of Cosmos DB. Okay, so the Cosmos DB can help you create NoSQL databases in the cloud. Okay, so this is one platform for doing that. Along with that, the Redis cache is something which is not, it's not directly a database service, but then if you want to do caching of your data, now Redis cache is an independent product. But now Microsoft has onboarded the Redis cache on Azure, so which is available in the name of Azure Redis Cache. So this caching is really effective, and if you want to cache some data of your application, you can do it via Azure Redis Cache. Okay, so these are different database services. In fact, I can tell you this topic never finishes. There are so many options in database services, like so all these stuff is available. We also have got managed instance of SQL Server. So all these different options are available. So once you start reading about each and every single option, you can see that it's a whole chapter in itself. Okay, but if you go for any course, then we'll be kind of covering all the database options, a lot of database options in detail. Okay, which will be like, what is a SQL database, what is the elastic pool of databases, what is a managed instance, then what is a SQL data warehouse, what is Cosmos DB. So all these are different things that we'll be covering. Okay, all right, so next important point is about Service Bus, which is the enterprise integration. So it's a messaging infrastructure. Now, one of the last questions I see is, what is the difference between a storage queue, which means you can store the data in that queue. And what is the difference between a service bus? Okay, so the difference here is that storage queue is something which is, which came up first. So Microsoft released storage queue, then later it actually went ahead and released service bus. Now service bus is much reliable as compared to Azure storage queues. The difference for that is that the difference within that is that if you have Azure storage queue, so let me tell you one small feature, that it is going to make sure that your message is delivered at least once. Okay, but in case of service bus, or in case of storage queue, at least once means that it can be delivered once, or in some cases it can even be delivered twice, or it can be delivered thrice. If it's not able to figure out that the message is going correctly, it can start delivering the message again and again. But in case of service bus, because this is a reliable, much reliable infrastructure, this is going to guarantee you that you're going to get the message at least once and maximum once, which means it is always going to be delivered once. So if a sender is putting up a message in service bus, it is always be available to the receiver once only. Okay, and then using service bus you can build different cloud design patterns like priority queue and all that stuff you can build using service bus. So of course we are not going to go into the detail of different design patterns, but then service bus is a place where you can build multiple queues in a very same location, and then you can have build your priority queue patterns here. Okay, so let me know guys if you are not able to follow some things. Of course I'm just kind of scratching the surface of all the different services which are available so that we can understand what kind of services which Azure provide. So the idea is not here to go inside the detail of any service, but to understand what are the different services available in Azure. Okay, so service bus is a messaging infrastructure available in Azure. Okay, so there is last question is, can you share the soft copies on mail? Guys, I'll let Sapna answer that question. She'll handle all these things for you. All right. Then we have one very interesting feature which I really like, which is a very costly affair in Azure. And again, somebody saying not able to see my screen. So guys, can everyone see my screen? And can you guys hear me clearly? Yep. Yeah. Okay. So I think one person who is not able to see it, maybe he'll have to, okay. All right. So the other interesting thing is about SQL Server Stretch Database. Now, this is one of my favorite topics, and this is also a very costly affair. Why? Because what you can do, let's say you have your database running in your corporate network. Okay, and what you do, you have got billions of rows. You don't want to keep all those billions of rows in your local, in your cloud, in your on-prem environment. So what do you do in this case? You can actually take part of your data and move it to the cloud. Okay, this would mean that if I'm going to query my local database, it is going to give the information, it is going to connect to the cloud database, fetch all the information and pass it back to the query. This also means that if somebody is, let's say if we are keeping like 10 years of data in the same table, we don't need to do any archival activity. So out of those 10 years, I can say 6 years, move it to the cloud. Okay, rest 4 years, keep it locally. So this would mean 6 years of data will move to the cloud, and if anyone runs a query saying that, hey, give me the oldest data. So it is actually going to download the oldest data from the cloud and provide it to me in the same query. Okay, so this means that without doing any archival activity and without having to manage those billions of records for last 10 years, I can move a part of the data and stretch it in the cloud and put it in a SQL Server Stretch database. Now this helps us to remove the archival activity. Plus we don't have to do any maintenance, neither we have to make any code changes on our side to handle that queries. Okay. All right. So that's what we had in the identity, in the messaging activity. Now last point we see here is about security and identity. Now what do we mean by this? The cloud, as I said earlier, or in fact the first thing I said is the cloud is very, very secure. How? because there are lots of services available in Azure which can help you manage your security and identity. Okay, so what are the security options which are there? First thing, or in fact the most important thing, is the Azure Active Directory. All right, so if you have the Active Directory on premises, you are handling all your security requirements using the Active Directory, all the authentication and all that stuff you are handling in the local environment or on-prem environment. The same thing you can do with the Azure Active Directory in the cloud. And also, if you want to, if you have got your on-prem Active Directory and you want to create an Azure Active, so if you create an Azure Active Directory also, you can go and connect both these Active Directories, the on-prem one and the cloud one, and both can work seamlessly. Okay, so this is one of the major security features provided by Azure. Okay, and I think one person was also asking about the different roles in Azure. So I can tell you that one other feature of security is role-based access control. Now, what do we mean by role-based access control? This means if a user will be created, assigned to a particular role. Based on that role, whatever access that particular user has, he or she will only get that. Okay, so if the user only has read rights, so the person can only read on a particular service. If a person has got write permissions, the user can go and make some changes to it. If the user has got delete permissions, the user can go and delete it. Okay, so it totally depends on the role. For example, you have got reader role, you have got owner role, you have got contributor role. So there are different roles, or in fact there are hundreds of roles which are available, using which you can put your particular user in a particular role, and based on the role, the user will get the access. All right. The other important point is something called as Azure Active Directory B2C, which means that in the very beginning we talked about an e-commerce application. Let's say you're building an e-commerce application and you want external users to sign up. Okay, how do you do that? Either you have to build all this in all the authentication, authorization in your application itself, or what you can do is you can leverage something called as Azure AD B2C, which means using this you can allow external users to sign up to your application. You can handle the passwords, you can handle the profile creation or profile management. You can allow people to do that. All this without having to write a single line of code. Okay, with few clicks, few setup configuration, which is visual as well. You can go and do that in the portal. Once you do that, your application will be connected via Azure AD B2C, and then all the new user creation, all the password handling, all the profile creation, and all the security which Active Directory provides. So by default, your users of your e-commerce application will also get that detailed level of security. Okay, so that is why this is and also if you want to add like the Facebook provider, Twitter provider, Google provider, like if you want users to log in via Facebook, Twitter, Google, Microsoft, so all this can be configured inside the Azure Active Directory B2C. Okay, this is like one of the most important and very interesting features of how you can allow your public facing website to configure do the handling of identities. Okay, which means users can come, create their accounts, and start working with your application. The next important point is about multi-factor authentication, which I hope everybody knows, that you just don't want username and passwords to access a site. You also want multi-factor authentication, like getting an SMS on a phone, putting that SMS in the website, putting that code in the website, then only you can log in. So all that kind of multi-factor authentication has been provided out of the box in Azure. Okay, then we have the Active Directory domain services, which means that if you have, let's say if you have a machine in your corporate network, so that corporate network, you join it to a domain. Let's say your company name is Amazon. So once you go inside the Amazon corporate network, you're going to join your laptop into that particular domain, right? In the same way, if you come to the cloud, you can use Active Directory domain services to handle the group policies, like people who are coming from administration background. They can handle the group policies, they can handle the domains, they can do the domain joins. All this activity can be done via Active Directory domain services. And remember, one of the major benefits of Azure is that most of the cases, it allows creating a hybrid environment, which means you can join your on-prem Active Directory, okay, with the Active Directory domain services in the cloud, and you get a hybrid network. Okay, so that is the major benefit of using Azure, that because a lot of organizations work with Microsoft resources, so by default you get a lot of hybrid connectivity when you go with Azure. Okay, and last point is about Key Vault. So let's say if you have a lot of passwords and everything, if you want to store it in a safe location, you can do that using Key Vault. Okay, so these are different functionalities available as part of security and identity domain. All right. Okay, so that's all about it, along with the last point, of course, the monitoring and management. So if you want to monitor your application, how they are performing, if you want to get logs out of your application, you want to analyze that logs, all this is available in Azure, along with if you want to do the management or the automation of your resources. Let's say you want to create 100 virtual machines. How do you do that? You can do it via automation, right? So all this can be done via automation, and you have got tons of functionality to monitor your applications. Okay. All right, so that's all about the different services in Azure. Let me just walk you through some of the pricing stuff, which I said earlier that it is a really pain point for people. People are actually very scared of, just work with a cloud platform if they haven't worked before, just because of pricing. You put in your credit card and you are suddenly scared that what I'm going to charge for. Okay, so I have to make sure that if I'm putting my credit card, it is 100% safe, and then I'm not going to be charged for something which I'm not using. Okay, so the first thing which we should know about pricing is that it is offered as a pay-as-you-go model, which means that you only pay for what you use. So today, if I create a single virtual machine, I run it for 10 minutes and I delete it after 10 minutes, I'm only going to pay for 10 minutes. Okay, so if the pricing for 1 hour is, let's say, $1, and if I run it for 15 minutes, I'm only going to pay 25 cents. That's it. Okay, if you sign up today, let's say if you have created your subscription today, you only run it for 10 minutes, and for next 2 months you do not do anything on Azure, you're not going to pay a single penny on Azure. Whatever you create, you're going to pay for it. If you don't create and if you don't use it, you do not pay a single buck for it. All right, so that is why. And another major benefit is that it is using per minute billing, which means that whatever minutes you use, number of minutes you use the virtual machine, you pay for those number of minutes. If you do not, if you switch it off after 10 minutes, you are only paying for those 10 minutes, nothing else. All right. All right, so that's all we have in the Azure this introductory session. And last thing I can do is look into the questions that you guys have raised, along with just to give you a view of the Azure portal. Okay, let me go there. And if I go to my browser, what I need to do is, after I sign up, I need to go to portal.azure.com. Okay, so if I come here, I see that I'll already have one subscription. If I want to create a single resource, I can go to either create a resource or click on all services, and then I'm going to say let's create a virtual machine. Okay, or let me do a storage account, because that's even easy to do. Okay, so click on storage accounts and click on create storage account. Okay, some people are saying can't see the browser. Just give me a second. Let me see if you can see it now. Guys, can you see it now? Okay, just give me a second. I've just shared my browser. Okay, so the browser is shared. Let me know. I'm just waiting here. Once you see it, let me know. Then we'll look and do a small walkthrough of that. Okay, still not. Okay, just sharing it again. Can you see it now? Okay, maybe some logistic challenges here. Okay, I saw one more option. Let me try that. I hope this should be available to you now. Okay, so yes, people can see it now. Okay, so guys, let me just start it from the beginning so that you don't miss anything. So if I go, what I need to do in my portal, I need to go to portal.azure.com, and once you already have a subscription ready, you have signed up for your Azure subscription, you can go to portal.azure.com, and what do you see here? You will see your Azure portal. Now remember, if I'm going inside the portal, I'm just browsing here and there, I'm not paying for it. Okay, so some people, I know some people send out these questions to me that are we going to pay for creating this account? No. Okay, so what we are doing here, this is what you see is called as Azure portal, and what you can do here is create a new storage account. Okay, so let me click on all services. In fact, before I do this, what you can see on the left hand side, these are called as different domains. Okay, so I was talking about domains. So this means that, for example, if you go to databases, you can see Azure Cosmos DB, SQL databases, database for Azure database for MySQL. Then we have Azure database for PostgreSQL, and then you have these are different options which are available. Okay, then if you go to, for example, compute, you can see virtual machine skill sets, and all these different options. So the domains that we talked about, in fact, much more are available here. Okay, now let's go ahead and do create a small storage account. Okay, so I'm going to click on storage. You can see the option of storage account. Click on storage accounts. Click create. Provide a name for it. Let me go to create a folder name called resource. Basically, that's called resource group. Of course, we can talk more about it, but due to time constraint, we can't. So let's say if I want to create a storage account, I can say Magna storage. All right, so it's already taken. All right, so I'm going to say create. So I'm going to select some of the configuration. That's it. And once I click on create, without specifying too much information, within few seconds our storage account will be ready. So this means my cloud storage account is ready. I can start and I can go and start storing my files there. Okay, so this is what you can do with the cloud. If you want to see the billing, you go to the left side menu, click on cost management plus billing, and what do you see here? You will have a list of all your subscriptions. Okay, so click on your subscription. So basically this is my subscription, so you can see the cost is very minimal. Okay, because I create some resource, I work with it, I delete it, so I'm not paying too much. Okay, but if you are in production environments, of course you have to look at the costing and plan it accordingly. All right, so this is what is there in the cost management. You can see your invoices, and again, just to reiterate, if you do not create any resource, or if you do not have any active resource, you're not going to pay for it. As simple as that. This is available in Azure. This is also applicable to AWS. All right, so that's all I had for today, and so I'm going to pass it back to Sapna, but before that, let me just take up, I think, few questions which were left. Let me just take that. and just going to try to answer these questions, and then I'm going to pass it back to Sapna. Okay, just give me a second. I'm just to figure out. Some people are saying they are from the DevOps background. So yes, for the DevOps as well, if you are coming from DevOps background, this is one place where you can apply all your skills related to DevOps. Okay, and one question is that for new developers, is a particular storage size available for free as we have in AWS? Yes, that is right. So the you have some part of it which is available to you free, just like in AWS. Okay. And one more question is how much we can store the data in storage account. So just to reiterate, I said earlier, if one single size can also be of 4.75 terabytes. So now you can imagine of course there are some restrictions, but you have to go and look for the different, the maximum capacity available for the storage account. But this is much more. I mean, there are lots of them. Okay, so you can store lots and lots of files into your storage account. Okay. So some people are saying I'm from desktop support. If you guys are coming from support and want to make a career in cloud, I think that's a really good decision, and you can switch over very easily. In fact, there are lots of domains in Azure that you can learn and be an expert in that. But if you just want to build up your career as an architect in Azure, you can do that as well. So you need to understand all these services, and then you can architect your application. Okay, so one person is asking, stopping a VM cost or not, or we have to delete it. So if you just stop the VM, you're not paying for it, even if you have not deleted it. So just stopping a VM, you're not going to pay for it. Okay, so if you create a VM, run for 10 minutes, after that you stop it, but you don't delete it, you still are not going to pay for it. Okay, you only pay for 10 minutes. All right. One question is about if we create a free account for learning, validity will be for 30 days or 1 year. So validity is for 30 days if you create a free account. Along with that, you get, after your 30 days are over, you get 1 year of free services. Like there are lots of services are available that are available to you for next 1 year free of cost. Okay, you can go to the portal once your free trial is over, and you can say free services, click on free services, and you will see a list of all the free services which are available to you per month. All right, and the question is about which are the certification for Azure and validity of certification. So validity is not depends on certification to certification, but for certifications which are available, you can just search for Azure certification. That is available for developers, architects, administrators, and there are different types of exams are available. Okay, so you can see for one exam is totally on Azure integration and security, one for infrastructure and deployment, and then we have for administration certification transition. Then we have the developer certification. We have got developing solutions for Microsoft Azure, Azure Architect exam. Then we have got for, it's the same stuff. Then we have got exam for DevOps also, Azure DevOps Solutions. We have got Azure Fundamentals. People who are just starting new, they can go for this exam. Then we have the designing and implementing cloud data platform solution, and we have big data analytics solutions and all that stuff. Okay. Okay, then somebody is asking, does deleting the VM changes the public IP? Yes, it does. If you are using a dynamic IP, no. If you're only using a static IP. Okay, so somebody is saying, can you please provide info on certification which you can recommend for fresh developers? If you are into development, like you mentioned, if you want to switch to the cloud and you do a certification, I can suggest you either go for Microsoft Azure Fundamentals, or you can also go for the Azure Architect Technologies, which is AZ300. Okay, this is an exam where you will learn about all the technologies, plus you are going to apply that. Okay. All right. So I think there are 2 or 3 more questions. I'm going to answer and close this one. So what is the cost of cloud course and how many months. So for that purpose, I'm going to pass it over to Sapna in just a few seconds, and you can talk about it. And one person is asking, what are Kubernetes services? So basically, if you know about Docker containers, and if you build Docker containers, and if you want to orchestrate all these containers, let's say now you want to, if you have build your application inside a container, and tomorrow if you want to scale out your application, how do you do that? So this is where the Kubernetes services steps in, which can help you create multiple containers of basically multiple instances of the same container, and it can be orchestrated. All right. And one person is asking, what do you suggest going for, AWS or Azure? Man, that's totally up to you. What do you want to go for? My personal preference is Azure, but then that totally depends on what you want to learn. Both of them are really, really good. In fact, if you are coming from, actually there is not even a background required. You can even go for AWS or Azure, but my personal preference is Azure. Okay. And I think somebody asked about roles, which I have already answered, like different role in terms of role-based access control. Okay. One person is asking, when is the next session? So there is no next session. Sapna will take over and she'll let you know. Okay. So person who's asking about what are the roles in Azure, does that answer your question? I mean, I answered your question that different roles are like contributor, owner, reader, administrator. So all these are different roles inside Azure, using which you can set up the, you can give the permissions to particular set of users. Okay. Make sense? Yeah, okay. So I haven't heard back the response from the person. So guys, that's all we had, and let me hand it over back to Sapna, and she is going to answer you on the courses and the structure of the course and the pricing and everything. Okay, so over to you, Sapna.
Thank you, Mohit, and all of you for participating in this session. Shortly, you will receive a feedback survey. Please share your insights and today's session, as it will greatly help shape future events we conduct, such as this. We will also send you a link to the recording of this event so that you may share it within your social network and revisit in future. On behalf of Magna Infotech Career Services, a hearty thank you for joining us today. We hope you found this information and dialogue valuable in enhancing your understanding on Microsoft Azure. If you are interested to know more on the topic, do check out our courses on MICS portal. It is mics.magna.in. So thanks for the day. Now signing off, and wish you all happy weekend.